Thank you, sir. I take this opportunity to welcome another member of the panel for today's plenary session, Dr. Vishnu Prasad R, Sir, Associate Professor of Law, KLE Law College, KLE Technology University, Bengaluru, Head of Resource and Development Committee. I request Tanmay Patil, sir, to present his application. Thank you, sir. I extend my warm welcome to our beloved principal, Dr. J.M. Mallikarjunia, Vice Principal, Dr. Lalita M.J., and IQIC Coordinator, Dr. Manoj Kumar V. Hiramal, sir, distinguished guests on the dais and off the dais, teaching and non-teaching staff, esteemed participants, and students. May I now request Mr. Tanmay Patil, Assistant Professor of Law, to introduce our panel members to our esteemed audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. I take great pleasure in introducing the guests and the members of the panel for the plenary session on the theme Religion, Governance and Politics. Firstly, I would like to introduce Dr. M.R.K. Prasad, sir. Sir is a leading expert in clinical legal education in India. He is the first recipient of Vanderbilt Fulbright Scholarship in clinical legal education. He joined B.M. Salgaonkar Law College in the year 1996. Over the course of his career, he has served as principal from 2015 to 2020, Dean Faculty of Law, Goa University, and Chairman Board of Studies in Law, Goa University. He served as a professor of law at the Indian Law Institute, New Delhi, for a year. He is instrumental in establishing and functionalizing community legal aid clinics set up by the Law College and community. For this initiation, B.M. Salgaonkar Law College received the Institutional Excellence Award in the year 2001. He was a member of developing e-content and access to justice for the University Grants Commission project on e-Pathshala for postgraduate courses in law. During his tenure, he was the founding director of ADR Board, chairman of Legal Aid Society from July 2001 to 2004, and 2007 till 2010, and 2012 to 2014, and also founding chairman of B.M. Salgaonkar Law College Law Court Society. With this very brief introduction, I present to this August gathering, Professor Dr. M.R.K. Prasad, sir. Welcome, sir. We have another guest from our own institute, Dr. Vishnu Prasad R, sir. He has been the teacher in law from 2007 with 16 years of experience. I am here stating this very proudly that he is alumnus of this college, and he started his teaching career from this college itself as lecturer in law. He has served in School of Law, Christ University, Bengaluru as assistant professor. Then he has served in National Law School of India University as assistant professor for 7 years, and he has served TNLU Tirchi as assistant professor and dean, PG and PhD. And currently, as we all know, he is working in this institution as associate professor and head of Resource and Development Committee. With this, again, very brief introduction of Dr. Vishnu Prasad R, I present him before this August gathering. I welcome sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I now request our first speaker from the panel, Dr. M.R.K. Prasad, sir, to address the gathering.
Good afternoon to everyone. I know the lectures are boring, right? We had enough lectures. And I was asked to speak on religion, governance, and politics. I'm just changing into religion, politics, and governance because religion does impact politicians and the politics, and how the politics will impact the governance. So I was given 20 minutes, and I promise I'll stop at not 20 minutes. Now let me ask this question to all of you. You could just raise your hand. How many are comfortable identifying your religion? The majority? Okay. Now, how many of you think that the religion is very important in your life? Not so many. Okay. Now, answer this one more question. To be called as an Indian, as a true Indian, how many of you think that religious tolerance is very important? As a true Indian, do you believe religious tolerance is very important? Whoever not raised their hands, that means religious intolerance is fine. Okay. So, how many of you agree or support interfaith marriages, that is, interreligious marriages? Not as much as earlier. Now, why I'm asking these questions? There was a survey done by Pew, PEW, asked several questions to Indians. About 30,000 Indians from across the country was asked. The results are almost similar like you. Maybe interfaith marriage, you are a little more liberal. What does the survey say? The survey say that majority of the Indians, that is 80% of the Indians, irrespective of their religion, think that religious tolerance is important. Religion is an important aspect of their life. However, they don't accept interreligious marriages. So the majority, that is 80%, said tolerance is important, but the same 80% said they don't support interreligious marriages. So what does it give? It gives an unique perspective of Indian or Indians. That is, we are tolerant but separate. So religion is important for us. We are tolerate each other, but we are separate. Does it sound familiar? In America, we have equal but separate. For the blacks and the whites, the schools are segregated, and they say they are equal but they are separate. So that sums up this question of how this religion, politics, and governance takes place in India. And if you see, last few years or maybe the last decade, the rise of religious nationalism can be seen in various countries. It's not only in India, but many countries. Let me give you a few examples. In 2018 in Costa Rica, when it went for election, Mr. Alvarado is a candidate who is a evangelical populist. His slogan is, if man of God cannot govern us, then nobody can govern us. That's his slogan. Now in Brazil, when the elections for the Brazil president has announced, Bolsonaro is one of the candidates. His statement is, Brazil before everything, God above all. Okay? And any one of you can tell me what is the slogan of Donald Trump? Making America great again. America. Anything wrong with these statements? Brazil above, before everything, making America great again. Does it have any religious tone in that? Mera Bharat Mahan. But it does. So many people in America thought making America great again is a racist remark, it is a white supremacy. Similarly in Brazil. Does it sound familiar in India? We have Bharat Mata Ki Jai, Jai Shri Ram. What does it mean? What does it mean? Are you praising the Shri Ram? When you say Jai Bharat Mata Ki Jai, are we praising the country? Or does it have a religious overtone? Or does it have a religious nationalistic agenda? That's the question. I'll give you another example. When Zulfikar Zia-ul-Haq Ansari, he he changed. Usually in Islam, they will say Khuda Hafiz, right? When he became president in Pakistan, Khuda Hafiz has changed to Allah Hafiz. And I can give you a number of examples how the state in India is involved with the religion, whether it is Rath Yatra, whether it is Haj Yatra, whether it is Vaishno Devi, whatever you name it. We have a mix of both religion and politics. And this mix of religion and politics is nothing new to India. Where before independence, we have used religious festivals to generate the sentiment of freedom movement. So therefore, let me say this thing. What does secularism means? What does secularism means? In a very broad way, it is a separation of organized religion. I'm not saying separation of religion. I'm saying organized religion from an organized political power. If you understand that, look at India. I think in the morning, Professor Vijay Kumar has informed you that India took secularism, whereas all our neighbors are not. Sri Lanka is Buddhist, Nepal is Hindu, Bhutan, Buddhist, Pakistan, Islam, Bangladesh supposed to be secular, but it is pro-Islam, Afghanistan, Islam, China, of course, is a communist country, doesn't have religion. So then why did we choose secularism? Now you need to look at our history. When the constitution was made, this country was divided into two, purely based on religion. Therefore, if you read the objective resolution introduced in while making the constitution in the Constituent Assembly, it was clearly mentioned that the constitution that is going to be made would follow or would provide the freedom of thought, expression, belief, and worship, which become part of our preamble. Now, if you look at our original Indian Constitution preamble, doesn't have any word secularism. And a general sense of Western theory that secularism is a strict wall of separation between church and state, which we did not follow. What did we follow? We followed what we call as principal distance between the religions and the state. That means, in principle, state will not favor any religion. And the general idea or the general understanding of the secularism is the state should not involve in any religious practices. But Indian Constitution did not follow that. Article 13, morning one of the justices spoke to you. Article 13, clause 3 talks about what is law. Because 13 tells any law that violates fundamental right would be void. Now, what is the law meaning? The meaning of law under 13 clause 3, including rules, regulations, etc., also says customs having the force of law. Read 13.3 again. Customs having force of law is also a law within the meaning of Article 13. That means any customary practice having a force of law violate your fundamental right, we can go to the court. Like the Shabarimala issue. And I'll give you a number of instances where the Constitution permits the state to interfere with your religion. Article 15, clause 1, right against discrimination, 15.1 and 15.2. Then 17. 17 is a clear interference of the state with the caste structure in India, which is predominantly the Hindu culture. That is untouchability prohibition. And then, if you look at Article 25, I think this is one of the articles which starts with a restriction. Usually fundamental rights are given and then comes your restriction. But Article 25, which is the crux of our secularism, starts with a restriction. It says subjected to public order, morality, health, and other provisions of this part, that is part 3. That means the constitutional framers clearly know what religion is, how it would impact our lives. Therefore, the freedom of religion is subordinate to other fundamental rights. It's very clear. Okay? And it also says, nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any laws regulating, restricting any economic, financial, political, or social, secular activity of any religion. That means what the state cannot interfere is with your religious faith, but it can interfere with other activities of your religion. Okay? And it also says providing social welfare and reform or throwing open to Hindu religious institutions. Very clearly mentions Hindu religion. And of course, Article 26 again talks about freedom of religious denominations to manage their own affairs, but again affairs of religion, but not other things. And Article 44, Uniform Civil Code, etc. So if you look at these features, Constitution not permits, but insists the state to interfere with religion and religious practices, which is completely unheard in the West because there are different reasons why the state has to interfere with your religion. First, as in the morning they discussed, we have a mind-blowing diversity. No other country has the diversity that we have. Maybe the closest is America, where they have so many people because of the migration. But America doesn't have 1.3 billion people. 1.3 billion people, China is one, but the China doesn't have a diversity what we have. So therefore, the concept, what we have in the West may not be able to replicate in India. That is one of the reasons why the state is supposed to interfere. Then the second thing is Hindus. The first problem is that whether we can call Hindu as a religion. There are many people believe that Hindu is not a religion, but it is a way of life. That's why as a Hindu, we are more worried about our religious practices than the belief. For example, in Islam and Christianity, they have one God, monolithic religions. Hinduism is not that. It differs from vast places, from north to east to west, south. There is a lot of different practices. And the number of gods we have, and in addition to that, if you go to village, you have village deities, what we call Gram Devatas. It's a complete diversity within Hindu. And the third one is the religious sanctioned social practices are oppressive. We all know, for example, practicing sati, etc. When we don't have an organized text, unlike Bible and Quran, what is the text for Hindus? I don't know. People may say Bhagavad Gita, but I don't think so. So therefore, with this, how you can reform the religion without intervention of the state? So that's one of the reasons why we need that. However, this, what we call conscious distance that is supposed to be maintained, worked maybe up to 70s, but later the politicians started using politics the way it will benefit for them. So that is where the Indian secularism has converted into pseudo-secularism. Because many political parties used religion for their political gains. Whether it is a vote bank politics, whether it is a divide and rule. Therefore, this has resulted in religious nationalism. What is this religious nationalism? In a religious nationalism, what we call is that the politicians take higher moral ground when they are contesting in the election, etc., they take a very high standards of ethics. For example, before I could say anything, because it is politics, I need to speak something, and I don't have any affiliation to either Congress, Communist, or BJP. But if you look at what is this higher moral authorities, like persons don't have family commitments, persons who are practicing celibacies, unmarried, all these becomes virtues for a leader. Correct? Similarly, the sentiments of a particular religion becomes a sentiment of the nation, one sentiment kind. Cow. Cow is a center of controversy. Do we worship cow? Yes, they do. But cow as a mother, not every state does the same. South is revered even in the south, but never treated as a mother as such. Cow is a very sacred animal. But then, what will happen when you put that as a nationalism? We have cow slaughter prohibition, cow vigilantes. Similarly, food that some people eat, beef, prohibition of beef, etc. So look at how politics shaped by the religious beliefs come to governance as a law. So I'm not saying whether it is right or wrong. I'm just trying to tell you, understand the link between the religion, religious beliefs becoming political beliefs becoming law. Okay? So the majority behaviors or majority practices get legitimized, whether it is in food, dressing, and other behaviors. Similarly, the minority behaviors will be subjected to microscopic assessment. Let me take one simple example of uniform civil code. Why we want uniform civil code? Ask any normal person, they will say Muslims can marry more than one, I cannot marry more than one. But look at the statistics. In spite of having polygamy in Muslims, how many Muslims have married more than one? And how many Hindus and Christians, even though it is a prohibition, married more than one? Almost similar, about 10 to 11%. So the UCC narration that only that. No. If you look at uniform civil code, within each religion there is a discrimination. What about gender discrimination about your civil code? What about geographical differences? For example, in Andhra Pradesh, where I am from, if my brother's daughter is a daughter for me, but my sister's daughter I can marry. And your Hindu Marriage Act says, Sapinda relation you are not supposed to marry, but custom permits you can marry. So what is permitted in Andhra Pradesh is not permitted in another state. So uniform civil code, a narration of minority, majority religion is not correct. It is much beyond that. Much beyond that. Okay? And I think I have 2 more minutes, I'll finish. What happens with the constitutional morality the professor has spoke? Government is a legitimate organization and it makes laws. Are we bound by the laws? Can you question the law? Unreasonable laws? Can we protest? Can religious belief be one of the grounds to protest the law? My religious belief and your law is completely diagonally opposite. My religion says don't allow women in a temple. But the constitution says allow women temple. How are we going to reconcile that? And what about the lawyers, judges, law students, law teachers? Do they have a higher ground of following constitution compared to a normal citizen? What about the MLAs, MPs, ministers, and all constitutional authorities? Do they have a higher obligation of following it compared to a normal person. So that is where the constitutional morality comes into picture. For example, a politician who predominantly campaigned in the election against a constitutional principle and won, that means the people mandate, is he or she bound by the constitutional principles because they take a vote while they are becoming the MLAs, ministers on constitution. So that's the dilemma. The dilemma is, one side the constitution permits you freedom of speech. That is where I say I campaign that a particular idea which is against the principles of equality, but then I win, I swear on the same constitution. So I'll have a problem. The dichotomy is that one side I'm going against the constitution, but I win, I have to implement the same constitution. Hence, the question is that every member of the country, right from the citizen to high constitutional authorities, whether they should follow the constitutional morality. In a sense, the morning Vijay Kumar sir said, the supreme obedience to the constitutional provisions. Are we bound to? Because all of the authorities in this country derive their power from the constitution. Therefore, understand this. Freedom of religion has two components. One, freedom to believe, or you can say freedom to some faith. Second one is freedom to act. When it comes to the first one, freedom to believe, there is absolutely no restriction. You can believe anything. I can believe that sati is good, dowry is good, women should be confined to the kitchen, minorities should not be treated equal. That's my belief. Perfectly fine. But can I act on that? When I am acting on that, it is going to affect somebody. Therefore, that is where the state comes and controls. So, of course, there are many things, but I am not going to deal with that. Please read Narso Apumali case. The ghost is not exonerated still, where the Supreme Court said that personal laws are not laws within the meaning of Article 13 plus 1 and 2. It creates a lot of trouble. So let me end. I think I took 1 more minute extra. I just quote the Dr. Ambedkar as an end, my conclusion. Constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It has to be cultivated. We must realize that our people are yet to learn it. Democracy in India is only a top dressing on an Indian soil, which is essentially undemocratic. Therefore, if you want that the constitutional morality as a guiding principle, I think it is all depending upon you and the law teachers and the judges and the lawyers, that we need to educate the people that all the communities live peacefully for the benefit of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sure your address will help a lot in understanding the importance of religion, having faith in religion and tolerance and religion nationalism, and how religion has evolved in India through mix of politics, and also enlightening us on what secularism is in constitutional aspect. Once again, thank you for your thought-provoking address, sir. May I now request our second speaker from the panel, Dr. Vishnu Prasad R, to address our esteemed members.
Now, my role is to supplement Professor Dr. N.K. Prasad, and I'm very comfortable at that because more or less I share the same thoughts that he has presented so far. But to add on, I would like to bring to your attention that whenever you speak about freedom of religion, do not start with the Constitution per se. For the reason, the freedom of religion has to be seen as part of the human right idea as such. And when we say it is a human right, kindly remember today we use the word human rights obligations are erga omnes. It is for all nation states to follow or comply with. And there is no choice. But there is more or less a conviction among the stakeholders in international community, especially the sovereign states and the international organizations, they have committed to this particular cause. And this is something that I want to particularly draw your attention to, point number one. And when I say freedom of religion is a human right, let's not forget that every human right does create obligation for the state, corresponding obligations. So what are these corresponding obligations must also be borne in mind. To begin with, when I speak about human rights, kindly remember we speak of civil and political rights or economic, social and cultural rights. These are two important categorizations as to the contents of human rights, and the civil and political rights create immediate and negative obligations, asking the state not to interfere with. But you heard Professor M.K. Prasad mentioning that Article 25 requires the state to interfere, especially on account of regulation. Now, that is where you need to understand that as a civilian, you may have a freedom to practice, profess, propagate any religion or have your conviction towards a belief that God exists or God doesn't exist. I would say when you are saying that the God does not exist, even that is a religious view. Even that is what we say as a belief. Religion is all about belief, and religion has to be taken as an opium for the common masses. It is to be viewed in that sense, right? So when you say that people do have a flavor for having belief, they have good reasons to do so. Let's be logically appreciating it. Why are you believing in something? Maybe it is based on your circumstances, maybe it is upon your grooming, maybe it is simply put across as a culture for some communities. But society does not comprise of the equals. We have what we call as disparity in capabilities of individuals in terms of health. Some person can continuously run for 40 kilometers, whereas some cannot. Take the example of KLE Law College. Without lift, how many of you come to fifth floor? I leave it to your guesses, right? So all of us are not, what we say as equals when it comes to our abilities or capacity to do something or aspirations. We all differ. Now, civil and political rights simply says, despite your abilities or capacity, you are entitled to some of the basic rights. That's the corresponding obligation for the states to fulfill. When I say states, I'm talking about in the language of Article 12, to cover both the governments, the government of India and at the state level, let me put it, as I always say to my LLM students, the MLGs, multi-levels of governance, including the local self-governments. And the economic, social, cultural rights are also equally important, because along with your freedom, today we are talking about religious mutts, which has become a center of concentration of several economic activities. They have become startups of their own kind, sui generis, I would say. This is something that we also have to bear in mind. So what is the implication, remember, on the policies of the government, to what extent the government can interfere or should not interfere? Point number one. And the fact that the freedom of religion is a human right, all states, sovereign states, and at all levels, the governments have corresponding obligations, is something that I have brought to your attention through my opening remarks. And in the morning, Professor Vijay Kumar had pointed out, right, being wise and not otherwise, the statement has to be seen in this way. Namely, when you speak about politics, he said it is nothing but gaining power and retaining. It is an art, right? It is an art of gaining power and science of retaining it. This is exactly what Professor Vijay Kumar had pointed out. True. But power is purposive is what I am trying to tell you. Kindly remember, when you speak in terms of human rights language, power has to be seen as being purposive. It is simply not devoid of any purpose that you allow people to either gain power or develop a science to retain the same. If you say the power is purposive and it has to be then brought aligned, in other words, with the constitutional mandate. When we speak about the constitutional mandate, we have already seen a reference made by multiple speakers to the preamble of the Constitution. Just look at the promissory part of the preamble to secure to all the citizens justice. We speak about then liberty, we speak about equality, fraternity, dignity, unity, and so on and so forth. All these are not empty promises. And what I said as power is purposive the power is committed to these causes is what I'm drawing your attention to. Fundamentally, you should take this as the core point for any discourse on the freedom of religion. And going forward, the sub-theme, in fact, is talking about religion, law, and we are also talking about the politics. When we speak about religion, law, and politics, I always wonder what was the interrelationship. When I was a student, I was thinking about it, and when I started teaching the constitutional subject, it became very clear to me that whenever we speak about the intersection, the fine intersection comes in the name of ERP, the essential religious practice, in my view. I would like to elaborate how. Now, when you speak about essential religious practice, take the example of Shirur Math's case, what Mr. Prabhuling Nalgi had pointed out, or it could be the hijab matter, right? Where the intersection of the governance or political ideologies and the freedom of religion stood before the court of law, asking several questions. It is not easy to be a judge, but it is easy to be a critic of a judge, right? And for lawyers, it is a paradise. What more do you want? You can interpret anyways, but judge has to come to what we call as stand by the constitutional vision, the morality, and the values, and so on and so forth. So judge's task is not easy. Having said that, ERP, essential religious practice, what is essential and what is not? It's a very, very difficult question to answer. Yes, you are guided by several scriptures, religious practices, or perhaps the great interpretations given by some scholars and prophets, you name them in some other nomenclature, they are there to guide us. But how is it to be aligned with the constitutional morality or social morality, the culture, or for that matter, we are even speaking about the human rights, etc. That is where this issue or the discourse on the essential religious practice becomes very complex and sensitive as well. And kindly remember, when we speak about the freedom of religion, it is a bundle of rights in my view. It is simply not a freedom where I can say, today I practice this religion and tomorrow I'm going to practice that religion. It is not that. Freedom of religion is to be seen as a bundle of rights as well. Just like we speak in the name of the concept of the ownership of, the ownership itself as a concept. It is a bundle of rights, ownership of property, right? So when we speak about the freedom of religion and the associated rights, kindly remember, people can have any opinion, and that is where in the digital world today we are facing what is to be allowed and what is not to be allowed. How are you going to draw a line between tolerance and permissible and impermissible tolerance? That is the question that troubles, as I pointed out earlier, the lawmaking or judicial decision interpretations as well as the freedom per se. And that is a problem that we have to bear in mind. And very quickly, I would also like to draw your attention to one more aspect. It's about the religious sentiments. What do you consider as religious sentiment and what is not? And it is simply put, in my view, religious sentiments are not mostly rationalized. This is a human tendency to believe or have sentiments, as many as we want, but some are moral, as Professor N.K. Prasad pointed out, Article 25, subject to morality, subject to law and order and health, there shall be the freedom. Article 25 starts with that language. If you believe in what the Constitution says, then I think the sentiments which leads to practices should also be governed. But are we really looking at the question of sentiments? Right? Are we really looking at from where the sentiments stems? Is it from religious denominations or mutts, or we call some other holy places where people do come for congregation or meetings and then discuss? Is it something like that, or is it simply we inherit from our ancestors? These are the questions that has been troubling me for some time. And very quickly, because I am also running out of time, can you see religion as an extra constitutionalism? If you know what is constitutionalism, constitutionalism very often, unfortunately, stands interpreted as just limitation on the power of the government. But it is something more. It is something more. Let's be honest about it. Constitutionalism is capable of protecting rights. It can be connected with the values of justice, liberty. While constitutionalism is a safeguardian of rule of law, if I say, not many will be, looking and smiling at that my comment, because it's truth. Constitutionalism is also the way we protect supremacy of rule of law. Otherwise, the power would be then prevailing over the written rules of law in any society. Then, kindly see if it is extra constitutionalism, how are you going to understand it and how are you going to even conceptualize it? Who is going to do so? These are all the questions which directly are connected with what we say as religion, law, and politics. And then, before I say that I would like to retire for this session, I'm going to draw your attention to one book which has attracted me of late, that is written by Bharat Desai, Professor Bharat Desai of Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has written a book titled as Sectorial Politics or Sectarian Politics. The author is of the view that society is now fragmented into several identities. When you say society, it's made up of people. And we are now calling ourselves as ethnic community, religious community, social community, or whatever the nomenclature. Somebody as minority, somebody as majority, somebody as economically weaker, marginalized, vulnerable. You name it, we have it. And religion is a trump card for political bands and for other reasons. So when we speak about this issue, please remember what Professor Bharat Desai is trying to say is India is fragmented but united. And that's where you meet all the three important, I would say, key words straight away in the limelight: law, religion, and politics. And I think that should suffice. Should there be any queries or clarifications, we are happy to respond to it. Thank you.
Thank you for your valuable insights, sir. With this, we conclude our first plenary session for the day. I now request Mr. Rahul Shivanand Chandu from 5th year BLLB to propose vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, esteemed participants, on the behalf of organizing committee, I extend a heartfelt gratitude to all of you for joining us at this remarkable, insightful session on the theme Religion, Governance and Politics. Your presence and active engagement have contributed immensely to its success. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Dr. M.R.K. Prasad Sir, Professor V.M. Salgaonkar College of Law, Goa. Now, I request Mr. Tanmay Patil Sir, Assistant Professor, to present a memento as a token of gratitude. I would also like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Vishnu Prasad R, Associate Professor, Keli Law College, Keli Technological University, Bangalore, Head of Resource and Development. I request Mr. Tanmay Patil Sir to present a memento as a token of gratitude. I'm sure that the profound insights on the concepts of religious nationalism, pseudo-secularism, nuances of uniform civil code, the balance between freedom to believe and freedom to act have undoubtedly enriched our understanding on the legal landscape. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our beloved principal, Dr. J.M. Mallikarjunaya, Vice Principal, Dr. Anita M.J., IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Manoj Kumar V. Hiremat, Teacher Coordinator for the plenary session, Mr. Tanmay Patil Sir, distinguished guests on the dais, off the dais, teaching and non-teaching staff, esteemed participants, and students for the active involvement. Thank you once again for being a part of the first plenary session of the National Conference. Your enthusiasm and commitment are the driving forces behind its success. We look forward to seeing you again in the upcoming sessions. Thank you.